What movie is so disturbing, you would never watch it again? Come and see. It is a World War II movie that focuses on a young boy who joins the Soviets to fight the Germans. And the scenes in that movie are so horrific. There is one scene that involves a barn being burned that my mind still flashes to and makes me sick to my stomach. The barn and the girl blowing the whistle in a daze. I picked it for a high school social studies report because of its high ratings on IMDb. After watching it, I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? And then I had to watch it /again/ to write my report. That movie has been described to me as a war movie without any glory. So basically, it's just the death and destruction, nothing else. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I'd be able to handle that. It's an incredibly accurate portrayal of what went on during World War II in that area, and that's what makes it so horrifying. I honestly consider it to be a movie everyone needs to see. Yes, it will make you feel terrible, but not enough people understand what humans are capable of doing to each other. This isn't even ancient history, this all happened relatively recently and absolutely can happen again. The more who understand that, the less likely it is to occur. If you don't want to watch it, then this is also a great video on the movie. YouTube link. I can't remember what it's called, but it was based off the true story where that girl was hitchhiking and got kidnapped and lived in a box for 7 years. Wasn't it called The Girl in the Box or something along those lines? Edit. It's called Girl in the Box. Colleen is from my town. She's been in the news just last week because her kidnapper and captor is up for parole and she's justifiably upset. What the actual F? He shouldn't be allowed outside, that's so horrible. Them. It was a married couple. They kept her as a sex slave. Web link. I read the book about it and was disturbed for months. It seriously messed up my view of other humans. There were so many ways they were doing this all in broad daylight, and nobody knew the truth. I started wondering who around me was secretly being held captive, or might have a slave in the backyard. Her name was Colleen Stan. I read the book too. Web link. Yikes. The guy that did it may get out soon. Per Wikipedia, on April 16, 2015, his request for parole was denied, and Hooker will be eligible for another hearing in 2030. 35, however, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, California officials contacted Stan and advised her that they were looking into possibly granting him parole in March 2021. Web link. Wow. And the guy who created a dark web market is doing 2 life sentences. Edit. I realize that he is a butthole who has probably committed crimes that he deserves life for. That being said, he did not get sentenced for those crimes. He is sitting for money laundering, computer hacking, conspiracy to traffic narcotics. Also, there are plenty of people who hire hits on people who only get about 10-20 years in prison, so that was not the reason for his 2 life sentences. Quite clearly, the US government does not care about letting monsters loose, but they sure do care about taxes and controlling the flow of money. The Perfect Victim is the true crime book. The survivor is named Colleen Stan and the perpetrator is Cameron Hooker. This happened in my hometown before I was born, but my mom was best friends with the DA's assistant who worked on the trial. She was the model to show how Colleen spent her time in the box. I also went to high school with Cameron Hooker's niece. Always found it strange the extended/resulting family members stuck around after everything. Red Bluff is a very small town, so history and reputation stick a lot longer than elsewhere. Also grew up in the area. I've been in the basement of the house she was originally held in. It was creepy to look at the little closet they kept her in and realize that it was a prison for all intents and purposes. They are currently talking about releasing this monster on parole due to COVID. Please help. Web link. No way should this guy get parole. He's a monster and he's lucky enough to be alive. Antichrist is probably the only movie I've ever turned off in discomfort. I have a strong stomach. Apparently, genital mutilation close-ups are my limit. The fox eating itself really disturbed me, too. Same with the lady ferociously masturbating. Just a dark, strange movie. It was recommended to me by a friend who is super chipper and upbeat. Very odd. I watched it in a cinema as a teenager. Some guy literally ran out of the theater apparently having a panic attack. That sounds made up, but it's absolutely true and was weird as hell. I thought it was the most pretentious nonsense, go nowhere tripe I'd ever seen. I wonder if I'd think differently now I'm grown up. Same. But watched it on a date in my 20s. We shook hands that night after the movie. Wow, this comment really hit hard. I wanted to clarify it wasn't as bad as it seemed. We were in a new casual romance. My date liked popcorn horror movies and horror video games, so after watching the trailer it was a go. I tried to switch us to something else knowing we were going to see an intense LVT movie. As disturbed as we were at the end, we still chuckled about it. We're still friends and laugh about that date night even 10+ years later. I love this movie, but Lars definitely tries to be horrible just to be horrible with his other movies, and my patience for this is limited. I knew what that spoiler tag was covering and I still clicked just to see how much you included there. I mean, you could have also mentioned the bloody ejaculate lol. Edit. Well, that's certainly the strangest award I've ever received. Wowie wow, thanks. Lol, the spoiler tag isn't working on your comment. This thread was made for Lars von Trier. Dead girl. Some guys find a dead girl, she is a zombie, and proceed to continuously have sex with her body. This progresses until one of the guys begins cutting holes into her body to have sex with, as these holes are warmer and cozier, and then he gets infected when she bites him. Edit. Forgot the worst part. We rented this as family movie night, and for reasons I cannot truly understand, watched it in its entirety. So yeah, watched this horrid film with my mom and siblings. I've never seen the movie, but I just read about it on Wikipedia. Apparently, he gets infected not because she just happened to bite him, but because she bit his dick after he tried to get a blowjob from a zombie. If the past year has taught us anything, it is that a substantial fraction of the population would give it a go. I used to think end-of-the-world movies were unrealistic in how crazy people acted in a crisis. Now after watching COVID, I think they're unrealistic and they don't show people acting crazy and irrational enough. This sounds more like a effed up porno rather than a movie. Yay, sounds like the director was horny and had some strange kinks. Also, imagine playing a role like this guy described to Fuke. Honestly, just reading your description has effed me up. So it actually exists. I thought it was all a fever dream. The movie tries, I think, to be an allegory for sexual objectification. It literalizes a common theme in feminist thought, that since an object is something deprived of genuine agency and its own point of view, sexual objectification is, especially when taken to an extreme, essentially mortification, treating a living person as if they were lifeless, a corpse. But the movie, I think, just veers off into misery porn. Too much attention is given to the monstrous glee of the men involved, to the point where it's almost a mondo movie, a kind of exploitation film masquerading as an expression of moral outrage for what it depicts. I saw this movie when I was like 13 and my sister was 15. We thought we were watching a scary movie. It was so horrible. I think about that scene in the bathroom all the time, and I'm 22 now. Old one, but it's seared in my memory. The cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover. I actually paid to see it in the theater. I don't know what I was thinking. I saw this in my early 20s and came back to it as an older, wiser adult. It's visually brilliant and emotionally devastating. We now think of Michael Gambon as Dumbledore, forgetting how tall and physically imposing he is. And we now think of Helen Mirren as prim and proper Kay, forgetting how excellent her emotional performances are. There's no extraneous detail or character interaction in this movie. I'd like to say Martyrs, 2008, but chances are I'll rewatch it sometime. Then again, I've been meaning to rewatch Watership Down, 1978, and have not managed to bring myself to it, so. Edit. If you're going to check out Martyrs, don't read about it. Go in blind like I did. Watership Down is a good book, interesting premise. Why they chose to make a effing animated film out of it is beyond me. And yes, I saw it in the theater when it came out. I was 11. Thanks, Mom. I worked with Pascal Laugier, the director of Martyrs, on one of his follow-up films. Deeply respected the guy going in and advocated quite a bit to work on his film. About 3 to 4 weeks later, I had lost all respect for him. F that guy. He's a pervert, a sadist and an all-around piece of crap human being. 2 weeks straight of women being beaten, bloodied and tortured. It was fake, of course. The director spent countless hours on the torture scenes, pushing the actresses to their absolute emotional limits to scream and cry as much as possible. It's really hard to describe what it is like experiencing multiple women crying and screaming for several hours a day, 2 weeks in a row despite being fake. It really affects you. One of the higher-up crew members quit because she claimed she caught him rubbing his dick through his pants during one of these scenes while behind the monitor. Nobody else claims to have seen it. The worst was when one of the lead actresses fell through a glass window on the last day of production. Wasn't satisfied. Wasn't stunt glass. Wasn't in the script prior to director telling her to pound on it. Glass shatters. She was sliced neck to ear across her face. I was there. She's screaming bloody murder for her life. Glass barely missed her artery, as we were told later, and the effing vagina. Pascal Laugier turns to his first assistant director and director of photography and whispers fairly nonchalantly, "When can we start shooting again?" Within several hours, the movie was done shooting and all of them are hugging, celebrating, and shaking hands. I felt I had PTSD for months after working on that film. I'm guessing it sounds horrific. The poor girl. And anyone who witnessed it. Web link. Yes. I slated that very shot, turned my back, hid in the other room and then heard screaming. Seemed like it would never end. I was one of the main witnesses questioned afterwards. I hope she wins her lawsuit. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. F'd me up. What was so messed up about this one? Never heard of it. It's a documentary made to tell a baby about his father who was murdered by his mother. In the end, the mother also murders the baby. In a murder-suicide. And much of the story is told through the eyes of Zachary's paternal grandparents who played nice with a vile piece of trash woman who murdered their only med student son in Pennsylvania because they wanted to raise their grandson when his mother was eventually convicted of murder. They lost their only child. They talked about going home and committing suicide because they had nothing left to live for. By the grace of God, they find out their son's murderer was carrying their grandson. The mother of the child certainly had no remorse in toying with the grandparents' emotions via baby Zachary either. And then they lost baby Zachary too, their only link to their beloved son. A grandson they cherished more than life itself. It will wreck you. The grandparents are very emotionally honest in the documentary and it makes the viewer feel very close to their despair. ETA, this is not a full-on layout of the entire story. There's so much more to the 13-year-old documentary. So just watch it. The fact that everything was tied up in legal and bureaucratic tomfoolery, it's infuriating because it could have been different and Zachary might be here today. It leaves you angry, sad, and defeated at the same time. The effing judge gave the woman, who was being extradited for murder, advice on how to win her case. That part of the movie stuck with me. I was going to say A Clockwork Orange, holy crap, it doesn't hold a candle to what you're describing. What's worse is that the filmmaker initially created this documentary for the child to see when he grew up so that he could know who his father was. I'd like to add that the narration is made to sound like it's speaking to a still alive Zachary that will grow up and be able to see the documentary until the point his fate is revealed. Then the narrator speaks to him as a victim who shouldn't have had such a fate and dwells into his grandparents' effort to change things to prevent something similar from happening again. The whole lead up to that reveal was horrifying. Because as he was explaining what happened, I was starting to realize what was coming, but of course I'm sitting there hoping that it's not what I suspect, so it's just this growing sense of dread as each detail is revealed, leading up to the reveal. Came here to say the same thing. Watched it 5 years ago and still not over it. Ratatouille, God, I don't even want to explain edit. Alright, since a handful of you think I'm talking about Ratatouille, the great Pixar film, the one we all love, you're very wrong. I'm talking about Ratatouille, as a cash grab knockoff of the original. You can find videos on it and I found the whole 40-minute thing on YouTube. If you need more information on it, search up Ratatouille on Google, which should show a picture of rats, and then prepare to go down a rabbit hole. Seeing this pop up in a sea of cannibal holocaust and we need to talk about Kevin gave me whiplash. We still make fun of my dad because he bought that thinking it was Ratatouille 2, laughing my butt off. Do you watch Danny Gonzalez? Tusk genuinely effed with me. Especially the pool scenes. This came up on TV one afternoon and my mom invited me to watch this with her, and I'm thinking, oh, this is by Kevin Smith, I love Mallrats. And such. She left to do something else within 15 minutes, leaving me by myself, not knowing the first thing about the movie. Imagine my face. F. And that first 15 minutes really feels like a normal Kevin Smith movie. That must have been intense. At the end of that movie, the only thing I could think or say to my boyfriend was, why did they leave him like that? To this day, it disturbs me that they straight up left him like that. In an encounter. Eating fish. Like WTF, he is still human. Fix him, bring his ass inside to hang out. Give him a burger at least. 3 years later, my boyfriend, and I still say, why did they leave him like that out of the blue, or for any situation that it can be applied to laughing out loud, so at least, we have that. My take was that by that point his brain was so broken that he actually thought he was a walrus and was beyond saving. Super depressing. They should have just euthanized the poor bastard. That's the one for me. I remember a friend suggested it because he knew I liked horror. When he said it was Kevin Smith, I kind of scoffed and did not expect much. Holy crap, I underestimated that man. Before this, I used to think nothing in a horror film could shock me anymore, but then they showed Justin Long in that Frankenstein monster walrus suit, my eyes got big and I felt sick. While I commend the cast and crew for creating such a disturbing movie, that's one I never ever want to see again. After watching Tusk, I genuinely don't know my feelings on it. Because on one hand, literally what the F, it's really disturbing and gross, but on the other hand there were just moments where I'd laugh out loud. Like the guy screaming walruses never cry. Epping sent me for like 5 minutes. So I was thoroughly disturbed by the imagery, but some other parts of the movie managed to stop it from giving me nightmares. I distinctly remember putting this movie on to watch a couple years back, and I distinctly don't remember a single thing about it past Justin Long showing up to the guy's home. I guess my brain is protecting me from traumatic memories. I will never forget the scene where it cuts to the guy squirming on the floor as a walrus human. It is burned into my brain. I adore walruses. My mom pulled this movie up because she knows how much I love walruses. I was nauseous and despondent for hours after watching. The scene where the guy is sharpening a bone while talking about why he needed to take the guy's leg. I didn't understand that was his femur until I thought about it later, and it made the scene much more horrific. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.